I just like, it feels so
Yep.
tedious. I think we
Yeah,
talked
man.
about this with even like text messages, or like, we were laughing when we were talking when I
Mm.
was in the park the other day. You know, I was like, we should talk about seeing what other dates are possible for something. And you're like, oh, I've got it pulled up here. This is what it is. Send an invite. And I was just like, yeah, that would have taken me a week to get there. I was going to put that in my calendar as something to then go do, not not just do it. Um, and so just kind of that understanding of like, where is the friction? Where is the rub? And
Yeah.
I think I kept pointing like the blame finger at myself, and saying like, I wasn't comfortable going live yet. I wasn't comfortable putting my face on the shit, and haven't been for a while. Like, I've been off of social media in large part for almost a decade now, since I was in the Peace Corps. I was very active
Okay.
on
Whoa, I didn't know
social
that.
before, and then I left and like stepped away from it and just never reconnected. It had changed a lot while I was gone. Like,
Huh.
um, I
Whoa.
moved out of country when the iPhone 2 had just dropped. So like nobody had them. Like iPhone 2, 3 is like when that started to become more common for people to have uh, an in-hand computer, and the socials really started to take off after that. So like I came back to 3 years later, probably the iPhone 5 or something like that, and social everything was it was just in a different world, and I just never
Huh.
tried to enter back in. I had a I had a flip phone, probably talked on the phone 2 or 3 hours a week in Thailand, coming back to a world where people are just on them. And I never really dialed back in. And so
Hmm.
I think a lot of it's just been a functional barrier. And it's like, well, as we address that, like I can hire that out.
Hmm.
Find somebody who loves doing that and let them do it. And
Hmm.
it cracks me up how long it's taken me to see that. I'm actually having more clarity about it right now that I've had uh, in a while, as far as the podcast specific. But it's, let's do some research real soon on that.
Hmm.
Real soon.
I like that. And I'm also having realizations on I'll just it's a deeper level where it's so nice, like thinking to talk and talking to think. It's hitting me again of how much I have been terrified of delegating, of spending money and trusting someone else and
Yeah.
putting my thing, like that vulnerability piece, and just like and it's like I the universe is pushing me up against this in almost every area of my creative work, like tech, everything, life, everything. The Dustan, delegate. No, I want to keep doing myself and stressing and like no, delegate, dude. No, but I get it. Delegate, dude. You're not lit up about this. Um yeah, so what I'm realizing is this right now is going to help me with other areas just by us figuring out how to delegate this and get that muscle going and get that momentum. And I'm like, okay, this is actually cool. Like applying the Tim Ferriss thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I make this much per hour typically when I'm at my best doing the things I love and like working with people in deep levels. Yes. Why am I spending all this time making this much, stressing because I'm afraid about this or what? It's like, what,
Yeah.
Dustin? Like, okay, let's shift that.
Yeah.
So I'm loving this, man.
This is great.
Literally, things I was doing right before we got on this call are directly connected to this conversation. Because I'm like, I don't like doing this, and I don't need to. That's the thing. I don't need
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Woo,
That was big.
man.
Just bumped into it there. That we had this discussion a little bit earlier in a different context about how often the universe is going to bring up these lessons and until we see them. And so
Mm-hmm.
like that like once you start paying attention and don't take action, or even before you've realized that's something you can take action on, like it's just going to keep giving you examples and opportunities that are going to be frustrating until you see it. And I think like that was we were joking, laughing, and at one point I was crying about those examples that are coming up in my life. We earlier today we had a great opportunity, great podcast. Yesterday, just this week, we've had opportunity to record multiple times. Had an amazing guest on, and was just feeling on top of the world. Just so connected to what we're doing right now, where we're going. Um, After we finished that, continued to have a great day, just connecting to other stuff. Got up this morning, ready to come in and record again. Get in the car, throw in Google Maps or whatever, and I'm 30 minutes away from where I need to record. And I've thought I've left myself plenty of time, and it says it's going to be 40 minutes until I get there. And just immediately inside, just start freaking out, anxiety, doubt, started judging myself, um, having feelings of like isolation. Like what's Dustin gonna say when I don't show up on time? Like I'm not being a good member of the team. I'm not doing my part. I'm not pulling my weight. How can they even trust me if I can't show up on time? I'm just all kinds of
Yeah.
judgments and doubt. And historically, like that's been an area that I do allow judgment in more so than other areas of my life. I feel like it's something that I do work very hard to be on time. So it's really pretty rare that comes up because I work, yeah, like I said, I work very hard to honor my time and honor other people's. But lately, last 2 or 3 weeks, it's been happening a lot. And so I didn't realize it till today that that's exactly what we've been talking about. I feel like there is a huge area for growth for me in my frame around my self judging, around my acceptance, my self love, and giving it, allowing that patience and acceptance in myself when something does happen. And I feel like the universe has realized that I'm not doing it in that area. So I keep being late for things these last 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm realizing I think that's going to keep happening until I sit with it, do the work of figuring out like where that judgment's coming from, what's going on, and release it. And until I do, I think I'm going to keep encountering these opportunities that cause that judgment, that cause that loop to start back up. And each time it's just an opportunity for me to see it differently. Each time it's just a chance for me to choose a different story and framework around it. And I just didn't see that until today. Again, not right or wrong. I think so often this is just the process we take in learning, the idea of picking things up is the first time we see it, or being taught something and immediately that becoming like proficient in that thing, or becoming an expert in that is ridiculous. And it's really the same in our personal lives. Like just because I've identified this opportunity and want to choose a different story around it, I think I'm going to continue to get opportunities to try that new story as well, and until it becomes ingrained, and
Yeah.
and then it'll be something else. But I'm just really
Yes.
I'm really
Yeah.
excited about that, and
Yeah. Huh.
and it's been something that I've just allowed to be an area that there was still shame and doubt and judgment. And concurrently, I think I was judging other people with their time management as well. It's always a two-way street as far as how we treat ourselves and then treat the world around us.
Damn, totally. Yeah, man. I have empathy for that one.
Hmm.
I God, I have it's so interesting. I've thought about this so much. I have a very few things trigger me more than being late. So this is um I'm gonna I'm gonna respect this because this one was unlike some of the other stories I've shared or where I've actually said the person that was involved. This person knows who this person is from my childhood. And not even childhood. I think I was in high school, like early high school or late junior high or something. No, I think I was a freshman in high school. Funny, that was a funky year, man. I talked about the bullying that happened that year. This was that same year. I'm pretty sure it was either freshman or sophomore year of high school. Um, I I was I was actually wakeboarding, and we were on a lake where we had private access to it. And so it was a very cool setup in the lake where I was able to look at a dock and see someone and like wave while I was wakeboarding and like scream at them and communicate while I was on the water wakeboarding behind a boat. And it was kind of cool. And I was so excited to see this person. And we're about to go somewhere. And I could come up with a lot of reasons to why this went down, but I'll just try to state it as factually as I can and leave that aside. Is I was wakeboarding. I was trying to do cool tricks so the person could see me. I saw them out on the dock and I was waving. I was all excited. I was all happy to see them. And we ski and we come back and I just, ready for a hug, super stoked, excited to go spend time with them and go do this thing and stay the night with them at this really cool environment where I felt like just inspired and really cool to be included. And little did I know that when we got to the dock and got out of the boat, there was a infuriated person waiting for me instead of the person I was expecting to give a hug and be all excited, which then proceeded to scream at me and berate me for being late and for not being ready to go at a certain time that I wasn't even aware of. In my memory, there's could be things I'm missing here. I know old memories are pretty inaccurate. If there was a time communicated I was supposed to be ready for whatever reason, I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't conscious. I'm not sure about how that all went down, but I remember I was so excited and I was like showing off my mood. I'm like, yeah, I was like just so stoked. And then I'm getting screamed at and I don't even know. I'm like, wait, what the heck is going on? And I get the exact opposite reaction that I was expecting. And when I view like baggage or trauma, I know that word gets thrown around so loosely these days. But a really shitty experience. And the theory of a samskara, which we've talked about before, of like just there's something that happened and then that energy is like stuck in my body now. And now when something happens, I get triggered and the energy is like, rah, and then it like stays in my body, And that moment of just getting screamed at and I was crying. I was so afraid to say anything though. And I just like stored it all in, all the anger, all the hurt, all the sadness, all the confusion, all the rage, like my fight, flight, freeze, everything just, and I didn't say anything and I was quiet on the drive and we didn't discuss it. I didn't discuss it with this person until just 2 or 3 years ago. And it was a very beautiful cathartic experience, but the person had no memory of it, which was wild. Zero memory. Zero. They didn't even know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And here's what's interesting about this too. So I'm kind of, that late piece means a lot to me because I've done a lot of work on it and I still have stuff come up where it's not as crazy as it used to be, but I've let a lot of it go. And it's like that old thing comes up a little bit and I feel it. Even today, I was just here in the nick of time. And even like, you ever heard that statement? If you're 15 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. If you're 15 minutes late, don't even bother showing up. One of my friends from college told me that quote when he was in corporate, and I just never forgot it. And there's so much energy and judgment and shame and stress and anxiety about that. And there's also honoring people. So it's interesting. It's like, I don't want to disrespect people's time, like you said, but I have a charge here not as much as it used to be, but I still have a charge, and that's really uncomfortable. So like, how, like, well, how, like, we know ways to continue to let that go. So, um, yeah, this topic means a lot to me. It's been a pretty wild part of my journey, and anyway, there was something else I was gonna say, but then it slipped my mind. So, yeah.
There was a piece of that that I was really interested in asking you about, because I think it's so interesting in how humans hang on to things and carry memories of events. That that piece of the story where you explain like just this incredible energy exchange that happened in that moment 2 decades ago plus, and you've carried pieces of that with you that show up when in a scenario that is reflective of that, when there's something else that you were late for, or even close to it, like even thinking about being late, that
Mhm.
starts to show up. And then again, 2 or 3 decades later, you actually had the opportunity to speak to this other individual about it, and they have no memory of it at all. It's been something that's been actively coming up in you for years.
Yep. This is
And
the
it's just
yeah.
like it was not a thing for them. And I think like this is so fascinating and so common,
Hmm.
of what we do inside of our head, and like
Yeah.
that judgment piece, that shame piece, owning something, making it about us, making it mean something falsely about who we are. And we've assumed that that's all coming because we're taking that judgment on from another person, someone we respect, someone we idolize, whatever that is, a friend. And I think it happens in that moment because we assume they think all those things. And maybe they do, but then they let it go and we never did. And so it's like this wild uneven yoke thing that's been happening for decades at this point. Um it's now become of like, part of our neurology almost. And and it's not even on their radar. And I think like the useful piece of that is learning that it doesn't have to be on ours either. Like
Hmm.
just like they let it go, like we can too. And like everybody there's so many different processes of doing that. But just using that story as a window of, oh wait, I guess like I didn't have to carry that either. Like if this person could go through that same event because they were there, uh, and not carry it, like that's also plausible for you. And I'm not speaking to you directly, but for any individual going through that. So I think there's a lot useful in seeing that and being aware of that, and not in judgment and shame about that other person that they should have hung on to this either. Just in,
Yeah.
huh, there's more than one way to process this situation. There's more than one way to process any situation in our life. And I think there's a range from supporting us to absolutely not supporting us in those different options. And so that's really it just makes it really apparent in a neat way, even though it can be uncomfortable. I'm fascinated what that conversation was like too.
Yeah, well, this is beautiful. You just helped me remember what I forgot, which is perfectly synced to like a perfect segue. Is so here's what's was also trippy about that conversation. Oh, this is so
Mm-hmm.
cool. Perfect layup. Is so humbling and just such a extra reinforcement of exactly what you're saying. Is in that same conversation, this person then brought something up with me that happened almost 15 years ago that I'd completely forgotten about. And it just flip, mirror. They had been carrying
Yeah,
hurt and sadness
yeah, yeah,
and some resentment and just disconnected, however subtle it was, there was still a hurt there. There was still a residue. And I was like, so here I am, like sharing, we're both crying and and I'm like vulnerable and all this stuff, and I'm just like, oh, I feel seen and heard. Thank you. I just need to get that off my chest, and I've been working through it a lot in therapy, and then I learned all these other techniques and tools to let it go more, because the charge I used to feel of being late, it was like a red line.
Yeah.
Now ranges of like a 1 out of 10 to like maybe a 4 or 5, sometimes, rarely. But it's typically like a 2, 3, maybe 4. And it used to be like a 10 every time. Like the moment I
Yeah.
would even think, oh my God, I'm going to be more than 1 minute late. Nervous system's just, and just like, it's totally off. It's like,
Yeah.
just like a cheetah's chasing me or something. And so, yeah, I brought it up, and then I do that. And then it's like, I opened it up though, which was another extra layer to this. Of the beauty is I was authentic. I was vulnerable. I went and I had the courage to be like, hey, look, like, I'm not blaming you. I love you. I got to share this though, almost for my own catharsis. Can you hold space? It's about you. So please prepare. Like, but I'm not blaming you. And then it came right back, and we were able to exchange the gift of being seen and heard. And it was like, whoa, this is so prevalent. It is so prevalent. And, it makes me think of a few things, and I'm happy to jump in to whatever of what we learned about mind reading, how that's linked to baggage or a grandiose sense of intuitiveness, intuitive ability. I remember one of my friends in college and I were like so determined and believed completely that we had like a damn near 100% accuracy on what we would know what someone was thinking or feeling, because we're both so sensitive. And like maybe half the time, probably not
Yeah.
even that. But
Yeah.
like there's like the mind reading, there's the like, that, and then what was the other piece that came up? Oh, just this principle of like something happens, I get triggered or my nervous system's jacked, and like whether it's anger or anxiety or whatever the emotion, like it makes you think of the Dalai Lama, that famous thing where I think we talked about this earlier today, but just to touch back for a second is, having anger at someone or resentment is like poisoning yourself, swallowing poison and expecting them to die. It makes no
Yeah.
sense. So whether it's like conscious, because it can go there, or unconscious and just in our nervous system, and we're like, oh God, I'm being late, but I feel like I'm about to die. Like this doesn't make any sense. And then like to the yeah, so like a lot of things just came up. I'm happy to run with any thoughts or anything else that comes up for you, but what are your thoughts on all that?
Oh, I love you bringing that up, and I think it's so fascinating that opportunity you had to share that experience with that other person. Like obviously to be able and willing to open that up, realize that there was something that, um, for lack of a better word in this moment, to say unhealed or was still raw, situation from years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then by bringing that up, provided the opportunity for that person to step in and share a similar, a different event, but that they had carried in that way, and just how important and useful it can be
Yeah.
to to have those conversations, and I think talking about it is very often the first step. I think that came up in conversation with a guest we had, Preston,
Mm-hmm.
just how often we don't know necessarily the whole path to releasing this baggage or to transforming it, but very consistently the first step is being open about it with yourself. And there's something very powerful about saying those words. There's something very powerful about expressing that, whether that's with the person that the event happened with or someone else. Like I think both can be incredibly powerful, but there's something about the ownership of stating it, of allowing that to come out and to speak it. What also came up with Preston was really clear. Now I'm stumbling over the words, like speaking to think or thinking to speak. Um, like something around like kind of that understanding, and how there are so many of us that we process things in a different way when we're speaking them, and often don't have completed thoughts until they're spoken, or we don't hear it in our head the same way we hear it when it comes out of our mouth, and we don't really get that clarity until it's been said. And I think there's so much agency, there's so much power in that vulnerability of stepping into that situation and confronting it and speaking it
Mm-hmm.
for yourself and for the other person.
Yeah.
But so that, I think that really fascinates me. I loved seeing that very clear example from your story of that happening. But how it also brings up the mind reads, and
Mm-hmm.
how consistently uh, we as humans think we know what's going on in somebody else's world, life, make an assumption,
Yeah.
and and then respond to that as if that's gospel. Respond to that as if they
Yep.
told us this, as if they were wearing a plaque that said that, like that it's
Mm-hmm.
concrete. And we have no idea because we haven't asked. We haven't. I mean, like there may be body signs, but that can mean so many different things. You really cracked me up with your story in college, and I can see it, and not just you. Like I've participated in these thoughts, but just like, man, I'm really good at reading people. Like I really get this. Like I know what's happening. I don't know why everybody else is so confused. Like I know what's happening inside of other people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so funny to think about, like later in
Uh,
life, we're often so confused on what's happening inside of us. Like how the
mm,
hell do we think we we can look at somebody else and understand
yeah.
where they're coming from, like what their backstory is around that? Or I think that's fascinating. But relating back to this issue, I think when we're involved in a situation where we have wounds, we have hurt, we have stored emotions from a past event, we're even more likely to do that mind reading. We're even more likely to go into a situation and make gross and wrong assumptions about where somebody else is, because we're coming from a place of hurt. We're coming from a place of trying to protect ourselves or woundedness. And I think like for me, an example of that this morning was like showing up late. Like I had all those stories in my head, and I'm working with it. I'm battling. Like I know that's not correct, but I know they're still coming up, and I'm still buying into them at least a little bit. Uh, and then we start the podcast. We're getting warmed up, and again, these thoughts come up of like my mind's still frantic because I was late. I'm not in the space like I want to be in the space. And I look over here and see you and just assume like, man, he was here an hour early. He did all his prep work, like he's zen, like he's comfortable, he's just holding this space, waiting for me to catch up and like lagging behind, and like how
Oh, this is so
gracious.
good.
And he got a great night, man, he's just looking fresh, got a great night's sleep.
This is so good.
And,
This is
and
gold.
then we do some meditation, we do some other stuff. I've released an immense amount of that just through
The
the
breath work.
practices we know, through breath
Yep.
work, through meditation. We do an eye gazing
Yep.
practice before going on,
Uh,
just to get connected to center, to be in this space, to
yeah.
practice being present. So a lot of that died down, if not all. And then 45 minutes later, maybe an hour later, it comes up in our conversations. You're like, man, I didn't sleep well last night. Like I was frazzled getting here. Like I barely showed up on time. And it's just like, it just made me crack up because of it reflected those mind reads that I had done out of a
Yeah.
place of insecurity, out of like feeling weakness. And
Yeah.
then I used something that I saw in you. It wasn't even there, to beat
Yep.
myself up again, and just assumed this about you, used it as
Yep.
judgment as if you were doing it, which is also ridiculous.
Yep.
Um, because, at the same time, we're throwing somebody else under the bus for thoughts they're not even having. We just assumed
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
so anyway, that I just throw that out there, and that really cracked me up. And as tumultuous as it was in the
Oh,
moment,
it's
it's
so
just
good.
it's so neat to be at a space in life where only hours later, if not minutes later, we can look back, see that mirror, see the opportunity for choosing a different story around that.
Dude, that's so funny. And that's such a good lesson. um, because so like I woke up today. Um, I had a really deep conversation with somebody last night, and I was up late, and didn't taking care of stuff around the house, just all that good stuff, and I went to bed way later than I typically do. Um, and woke up and just not feeling refreshed. And then I'm like, okay, well then there's a reason why I have these habits I do, and there's all the stuff that we talk about, and I you know that I also preach about because it's such a big impact on my life. So I get up and I do my cold plunge and my breath work and um the priming and the tea. But I typically work out in the morning, and so that's a big part of my routine, as you know. And I didn't have time, is I just well, I had time, but I allocated that time for sleep because I went to bed so late. So I had time, but I reallocated it. And I come in, and I was eating my breakfast, and I know how long it takes me to get here with if I don't take a toll road. And so I'm sharing these details because it's so hilarious to me to like further prove what you're saying of like everything you're minded. And this is my whole morning, which you knew nothing about. And I get here like 5-10 minutes before, get everything, and I'm here. I was on like within just less than a minute late, and our guest was already in the room. And like,
Oh.
and here's what's also beautiful about this. So like,
Mhm.
I'm further proving the hilarity and the like humility of what we're like honoring, that we're living still. And here's what's also beautiful on the other side of that is, if this had happened a year ago or 2 years ago on average, my anxiety today was a one, maybe. I mean, I was, my energy is not as high as it typically is. Uh, but I was like, cool, I'm here. And so I think that's probably what you saw. But I still was like, I don't have the best energy, but I'm here. I'm present. I'm grateful. I love what we're doing. And like, that fuels me. So cool. And like, but the beauty is like 1-2 years ago, that probably would have been, 5 out of 10 anxiety. We go
Yeah.
5-6 years ago, that would have been a 7-8. You see my point? Like, there's beauty in that too. Like, we're able to laugh. It's still happening. We have these practices and things we do, and it's a testament to the work we do
Yeah.
and help others with and embody, and like are humbled by, that we're never going to be perfect, and that's not even the point. But like, cool human experience. All right, I'm going to show up, and here I am. And then we still mind read, even though we know this. And it's there's just so much dichotomy, and it's
Yeah.
all just there, and it's like, cool. As long as we learn and grow and can laugh in the process, hopefully,
Mhm.
we're winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. It's so grateful.
love that.
Gosh, it's hilarious to how in that moment when you're feeling those things, like how I can't see any of this. Like I never would have imagined that later this
It's so
day
good.
we would be laughing about this. We would be sharing a similar story. Like again, like the story in my head was isolation. You're the only one that does this. You're fucking up. You're fucking this up for everybody else. Like you're
Yeah.
unprofessional. Um,
Mm,
and you know, and that's just a story,
hmm.
and an unsupportive, unhelpful, false. Like, was I late? Yes, that is true. But none of the rest was. Like all the rest was made up.
Hmm.
Um and yeah, it's so yeah, it's just wild like how in the seed of that event was an opportunity for this realization, was an opportunity for this expansion, for us to connect in a different way on this, for us to I didn't actually know that was something that was a I don't like the word trigger, but that was something that caused more irritation for you internally than other events.
Mm.
Because it absolutely is for me. I don't think it's come up. We just haven't talked about it
Yeah, it's
before.
funny. Huh.
Um, and yeah, so what a What a fun roller coaster being 5 minutes late was today, and like all the um I don't know, all the lessons that it's bringing up and connecting to, because I think like nothing, as much as we feel like it often does, like nothing happens in isolation in our body either. Like none of our stories of worthlessness or our inaccuracies about our value or how we perceive ourselves happen in only in one situation. Like they're connected to our other stories around that. And once we start to pull on that thread and unravel it and are curious about what else that's connected to, we start to see the other ways that we can change, modify, improve our story about ourselves and accept that. And I think that's just continue to be grateful for that and continue to choose curiosity around it as soon as I am able. Because obviously, like right in that moment, that can be really hard to see. But just having grace with ourselves that when that page does turn, we have a breath and have a second to see it differently. Choosing choosing to sit with it, choosing to see it, choosing to ask yourself questions. Um, yeah, and it's led to already great conversations today and laughter, tears, kind of just a range of emotions, and you're like, that's such a little event to do all that, and yes and no, like it is a little event, but I had so much stored energy and emotion around it from other things that that's not how it shows up in my psychology. It's not how it shows up in my neurology.
Yeah.
Um, and I got opportunity to see that and work with that and choose something different today.
Dude, it's so beautiful, and it just made me think of something something very cool, like to correlate to all this. So like
Hmm.
if I think of like in stages, like step 1, step 2, step 3, if I go chronologically through the process, I'm like, okay, like when I'm thinking about life in the human experience, us as humans, we're for the most part doing one of two things. We're seeking or chasing or going after something we want, or we're actively trying to prevent something happening that we don't want. I learned that from then I think about, okay, like we do all these different things to try to do that. I mean, there is an infinite number of tools and methods that humans offer each other, from astrology to psychedelics to CBD to, I mean, on and on. And each culture has all its own stuff. So I'm like, okay, so it's like, okay, cool. So if we're talking about this here, it's like something's happened. Like there's a pattern in my life, and it's happened, and it's not enjoyable. And so I want to see like through just an awareness, and offering my perspective on this and see what you think. So it's like, cool, taking what you said. It's like, all right, we have awareness. Step 1, I'm not unconscious. I'm not ignorant to it. I'm not ignoring it. And I'm not just blatantly reacting to it. I've gained awareness and some mindfulness to know, oh, trigger response. Conscious response, unconscious response. Okay. And then like, well, what do I do with that? Right. It's like you said, sit with it, be aware with it. Like, be like, we have learned a lot of different tools. And I'm thinking like, beautiful to have self-compassion and not just be like, and like, we very typically don't do that from what like, but we still do it sometimes, but like we typically don't. And then it's like, well, then what else can we do? And I'm thinking of things we've never discussed on this podcast, which I'm going to throw out. I may want to exchange some of this with you at another time, if we feel the need to. But there's 3 really cool things, like prime concerns, some modality belief change, and I'm blanking on the other one. So silly. I didn't sleep a lot last night. So, well, 2 things I've got: prime concerns and some modality belief change. Anxiety model, MER, mental emotional release for sure. But like, my point in saying all this is, it's like, I think in the human experience, I know I spend a lot of my time getting caught up in this. I mean, most of us are like, how do I evolve? How do I get this patterns of mental, emotional, habitual suffering, or like just stress or crap out of my system? Like, how do I do that? Like, I think that's one of the most commonly asked questions for a lot of people, whether we run or we numb or we fight, flee, freeze, all these different things. And I think that's one thing for me that's really beautiful about this conversation is we're able to talk about it. We're aware of it. We can laugh about it. We can tear up about it if that's what happens. And it's like, and if we feel for some reason it's not at a level that we're like comfortable with, we have other things we can do. And I want to share something very personal, where you and I did this last summer, where you did a submodality belief change on me. Because my belief was, okay, my pattern, I got sick all the time. And I was so deathly afraid I was going to get sick at that 3-week intensive trainers training, TT trainers training event we did to learn how to public speak. And it was like, hey, I've done everything I know how to do with this for like 12 years, supplements, exercise, I know so many things. Oh, I'm going to try something else. Fall down 7 times, get up 8. Try some modality belief change. I haven't done this and this before. I haven't been sick since then. And so part of why I'm saying this is just to enjoy the sharing of this with you. And for whoever's listening, like, this is a really cool gem. Like, it may not be that specific tool, but that tool's pretty amazing. But it's like, there are ways to shift our subconscious mind, like, that a lot of humans probably haven't tried. And that's a beautiful thing.
It
And
is.
I think it's empowering, and it provides agency and liberation and confidence and genuine self-esteem, and it's just fucking cool. So I don't really know where else to go with that. I just that really came up, and that's a really exciting thing of like, this is such a profound topic in a sense for me. So yeah, man, that was it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I remember that day well. And I think it is. I really appreciate you bringing up too that there are so many tools. There is another way and other ways to process through life. Like, we will bump into things that are struggle, and we will have areas of life where like emotions are stored up, or we have a habit that we keep playing out, or even experience life in a certain way. Like, I wouldn't say your getting sick all the time was a habit you had. However, like, when it was connected to your belief system, like, that's what it continued to create in your life, because you would, whether through your understanding or not, whether it was conscious or subconscious, you'd taken on that understanding, that identity. That's just the way it was. And that's because that's how it historically been. So very naturally, this is an incredibly human thing to do. You just assume the future is going to be the same. And it simply doesn't have to be that way. And I'm so excited that continues to be reflected back to me as we continue to grow, as we continue to learn tools, to practice tools, to help enable not only ourselves but others through this, identifying and then releasing that baggage. Changing that story allows us to step into something new, and truly life altering consequences can come from that. You have not been sick over a year. And that,
roughly a year, almost a
roughly
year.
a year. I guess it is right at. And I mean, that's incredible. And what a dynamic shift internally that was. And I think that's a neat thing to share too, is like, because it has to start there. It happens internally, but first, before it'll ever be expressed in our external physical world, we have to step into that other belief, that other thought pattern. And there's so many neat ways that we get to help people do that. And quite honestly, we've experienced the majority of them on ourselves, because it's not like we're not coming from
theory.
I've always been well, and so these are the things that I do, and so I'm helping other people. Like, these are all things that have changed my life as well. And I know that they work. I've seen them work. I've felt
Yep.
them work.
Yeah.
And yet that's what something that's so empowering about uh, being a coach, about helping other people through this, is consistently getting that feedback and getting to witness people's lives pivot and change from a
Yep.
story of isolation, a story of this is just the way it's going to be, I'm a sick person, to
Yeah.
I'm empowered, I am strong, I am healthy, I am well. And I think that was a really neat shift that happened in that moment too. Like, there was a piece of that pattern that you had owned,
Mm-hmm.
as who you were, and it changed that day. Like, that was no longer part of your programming.
Mm-hmm.
And then externally, it started to shift, like how your body showed up, how your body
Mm-hmm.
responds to the
Mm-hmm.
same things that it was responding to before. It was just
Mm-hmm.
choosing a different path, choosing a
Mm-hmm.
different story. And I just think that's an incredible example of something that's possible in every area of our life. And um, not that I always see it immediately or step into that,
Yeah.
but I know that it is possible, and it's so profound to continue to get those lessons until we do choose other. And I think that's kind of where this conversation started. Like, I think,
Yeah.
I call it the university, God, energy, whatever makes sense to you organizationally for construction of why we're here. Like, I think these opportunities to choose something that is healthy will come up in the form of friction, will come up in the form of uncomfortable situations, in the form of sickness, in the form of other people acting out toward us, until we see that as an opportunity to shift
Yeah.
internally
Oh yeah.
first. We
Yeah.
don't change our outside world by focusing on our outside world. We can only change it by focusing on the internal world.
Mm.
I'm forgetting that Wayne Dwyer quote that's come up multiple times uh, in this. I'm forgetting the exact wording. You remember the one about
Oh yeah.
shifting what you
When you
think in the outside?
change, when you change the way that you look at things, the things that you look at change.
Yeah,
I love
it's
that quote.
brilliant.
Yep.
It's so brilliant. And I continue to find evidence for that over and over.
Yep. Amen, dude. Yeah, it's man, like when I think, God, it's a, just total organic story. Like, talking about coaching. We haven't really talked about coaching much, actually, at all on this podcast, even though we both do it. Um, and I got a massage this last weekend, and the massage therapist, was asking me, what I do, and I've been working on the branding of that because I don't like the term life coach.
Yeah,
You know that we've talked about that. I'm just like,
yeah. Doesn't
like
fit.
I love the term practical psychologist, but I'm looking into the legality and honoring of licensed psychologist, if we're able to use that. Though I know Tony Robbins says all the time, even in writing in the manual that we got from what we did, I saw that. But I was thinking a lot about just subconscious mind specialists. Like, that's why I'm saying all this, is like I've been thinking about, like, what do I actually do? Like, what's worked for me? Like, what has really changed my life? Because people that are listening to this, people that know me, people that are just discovering this, that whenever, my book comes out, or like, or on my social media, like my clients I'll share it with, like, I'm pretty damn open. And it's like, I came from some pretty dark, unenjoyable habits, patterns, and stuff like that. And a lot of the stuff that I was sold that didn't work was conscious mind stuff, was like just brutal hard work and forcing, and just, manipulating the outer world, or just like consciously trying to shift something, or like create a habit and do this. And it's like, well, if my inner world isn't aligned with that, I am brutally spending an immense amount of energy and stress. And it's like, there's got to be a better way. And so it's like in a sense, like you and I are subconscious mind specialists. And like, I think what I'm excited about with that is that there's a lot of tools that work on that, whether it's EMDR in a clinical setting or psychedelics or a breakthrough session or working with our values or working with the core human needs or working with negative emotions or limiting beliefs or scrambling the subconscious mind on thinking that something is the way it should or shouldn't be, or knowing about mind reads, or an immense amount of stuff we've learned, or deep meditation, or breath work, or cold plunges, or saunas, or visualization. Like, there's a lot of ways to get where we want to go. And it's so much fun to talk about it, explore it, embody it, share it. We've done work on each other. And just like, I love the humility we share, especially with whoever's listening to this, of like it never stops. And like, I'm passionate about getting even more self-compassion, and like, and just honoring that and like, oh, cool, here's another tool, or maybe I'll try this tool, or oh, this thing popped up again. What's the flavor? Is it the same level? What did I do last time? Oh, let me try this. But like, it really is typically about the subconscious for me, almost always, or just a habit that I know shifts my state. So yeah, I think I just wanted to share that. It just inspires me, man. I have another level of awareness of this podcast and how we're living our lives, and my branding and coaching and all this stuff that I've created, that I've shared and creating with you this year. And just what the future looks like and how I can best communicate this to people, whether it's personally or professionally, like whatever that is. And honoring the power and the clarity of it. Yeah, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Really resonates with me, and right there with you. I think what it also brings up is just how powerful change can be, and I think how wrong my former story around change was. I mean, I used to think it was something that was so hard to come by. It only took effort. We only got there by immense struggle, and took a lot of time to course correct something, super significant, like a limiting belief, or um, a habit about how we thought about ourselves. And it's been so empowering through the tools we learned and the people we've worked with, just to realize how immediate change can be, and how quick and powerful some of these tools are. I mean, we both experienced I mean, obviously in our own lives, as you just said, like your story here, but these moments in time when working with someone, of doing some of these techniques that are 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes long, and it changes the way your life operates from that point forward. Like,
Mm.
an incredible shift in releasing baggage and choosing another way to live and to be, and change can be immediate. And I think like that's another thing that I really want to communicate, share. And I think that can often be something that holds people back from stepping into an opportunity to try to change or try to shift something. It's just the weight and the story they have around what that process is going to be like. And I'm so grateful that so many of our tools and techniques that we learned are so affirming. Um, they're so engaging and easy to step into and walk through and participate in, and yet the results are profound and life altering.
Shoot, man. Amen. It just also reminded me in hearing you
Mm.
say that, actually. The I almost don't want to say it,
Mm.
actually, because I'm thinking if we put this link in the description for this episode, there's a video that shows people how powerful the subconscious mind and conscious mind, like how much we can miss with our conscious mind, where we think we're so aware of what's happening around us just in what we see.
Yeah.
And like, one thing that we were taught that blew my mind pun not intended, is when I learned how much, like we talked about this earlier with Preston too, but we didn't talk about this, like how much data our subconscious mind's processing. But like if we took all that in, which this is what psychedelics do, we might have talked about this a bit with Jesse as well, but like there's a video that is very humbling, and I'd recommend, I'm going to put it in the description.
Awesome.
I'm not going to say what it's about, but just for anyone who wants to try this out, click on the link to the video. It's on YouTube, and just follow the instructions and just have your experience and like just have fun with it. I've done this with almost every client. It's so much fun. And it's really like, because we're going to do an episode on psychedelics. I'm pretty sure coming up.
Yeah.
And like, it's pretty mind blowing when we start discovering how powerful our subconscious mind is. And like, if someone has done psychedelics, to like notice, like you're getting like conscious mind 128 bits of data per second, unconscious 2 million. Psychedelics, it ramps that up. Like you're getting more than 128 bits of data now. I don't even know what it is. I have never heard that number compared in that format, but 1,000, I don't know, hundreds, 100,000 bits of data. And I want to share this too, like all this stuff about the subconscious mind. Joe Dispenza said this in an interview, and I thought it was brilliant. And I think really honored some people that are like, I've heard they're like the kind of the anti-woo-woo people that are just like, God, like, you know, let's just not talk about this crap. Just work, like eat, do your thing, grind. Or like, you know, or the other sensitive people that are just like, I want to meditate all day or whatever it is. Joe Dispenza said this. He's like, and he meditates a lot. And he was like, I think he meditates, he blocks off, I believe, 2 hours early in the morning before the sun's up. He knows that if he blocks less, he'll stress about not having enough time and he won't go deep and do his meditations. And he blocks off 2 hours, and he's like, I meditate for up to 2 hours every day. The rest of my time I'm working and I'm serving. I don't sit and pray all day that something great's going to happen to me. Like, and just hope to manifest something. I visualize. I use my subconscious, whether it's a tool, a release, or like I'm visualizing like the way I want my perfect life to be, and the quantum physics behind that law of attraction, quantum entanglement being another cool thing about all that. And it's like, but then the rest of the time, I'm working, I'm serving, and it's like then I go back to the drawing board. I train, I talk, I rehab, I do personal growth, I tweak it, and then I'm working. And I think there's a beautiful dichotomy and balance that I'm always working to optimize. The best balance for me is like, how much time am I visualizing? How much time am I priming? How much time am I shifting my state? How much time am I actually being productive in my work and serving? How much time, like, am I optimizing? I'll chunk up to this. And we use that term of simply zoom out, like a bird's eye view. How much time am I dedicating to enhancing my subconscious mind, my programs in my personal computer of my system? And then how much of my life am I actually in the world utilizing those programs to enjoy life and serve others? And that to me is the cool balance. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That was it.
What a neat conversation.
Yeah.
This is
Wow,
really
we went
beautiful.
long.
Yeah,
Holy
really.
moly, it's been an hour and 15 minutes. Jeez Louise. Flew by.
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you for joining in, everyone. We will this has been awesome.
It is.
We will see you next time. And yeah, I'm grateful, Joe. Thank you.
Back at you. Till next
Beautiful.
time.
Till next time.